to start off by talking about this documentary. This is an absolutely amazing documentary that I've had a chance to sit down and watch. So I was wondering if you could start off by telling us a little bit about where this journey started for you with this documentary.
Sure. It really started back in 2015, 2016 when I sort of got the sort of feeling that I needed to go back and make tell a story. I made a film 25 years ago about Lebanon, and it was really, the angle was a misperception of the country based on the 15-year civil war and the world thinking of it as a terrorist haven and kidnapping zone, and not really knowing the whole story of this ancient country. And this story was like to follow up. So the inspiration came with, all right, well, after the war and they've come back and they've rebuilt. I've been here a couple of times, and it looked like there'd been growth and renaissance. And I thought I was coming back and telling a good story. And it was only supposed to be a small film, just not quite the big production it is today. And but when I did my first shoot, we came out in 2017. Spent 6 weeks and came back home to Sydney and sat with all the information and thought, oh my God, there's a horrible, sad story that's, that needs to be told. And it was a bit more, far more serious, and it actually resonated with a lot of the cries of people around the world for different other reasons. But and that's, what led me back about 4 more times after that to eventually pull the story together, because it took, 4 to 5 years to finish.
Learning about things like the corruption when it came to garbage disposal and with the electricity and things like that, did that surprise you? Because as you just said, for a lot of people, Beirut looked like it was a city that was back on its feet and thriving.
You're absolutely right, and even CNN last year in their travel, I don't know what they call it, but their travel bloggers and directors sort of named it as one of the top 3 night spots in the world. So, this is come to Beirut, not now, but before the revolution and before the sad port explosion that, we're remembering next week, was really a phenomenal place to visit, and their vibe. And so you're right. I came and started digging in, and under the surface, it only took a little bit of, digging, and the cracks really started to show. But if you're coming in for a week and you're having a great time, or 2 weeks, you don't even bother. You're just, lapping up the lifestyle and the nightlife and the bit of history, and then you take off again. But when you walk, travel around and spend 6 weeks and you're here to ask questions, and it really all starts to reveal the sad truth of the situation, and the lack of electricity and the lack of structure for basic services was shocking.
You mentioned there about you didn't have to dig very far to find some of the information, and you alluded to that in one of the interviews as well in the documentary, where someone was reluctant to mention a name, and you said, "Oh, I'll be able to find out." Is it really that? Is it really that obvious who the corrupt parties are to be able to just find it out very, very easily like that?
The reality is, before the revolution in 2019, October 2019, and then even more so after the port explosion on August 4 last year, absolutely. That's why I had to say, give me names. Generally generalizations. You know who it is. We all know who it is. And they'd make sweeping statements like that, but they'd never put a name to it. And that's why I pushed that lady to give me names. So she said the names, and in another, you may noticed in another interview, I said, you can name them if you like. He said, no, we know who they are. No one needs to know. That was 2017, that interview, and he was still very reluctant to put the names out there. But this woman that I interviewed, Pauline Cubian, who's now a Member of Parliament, was quite brave. She put it out there, and and that's it. Though they all know who it is. That's absolutely right. They do know. Everyone knows, but that was part of the problem, that they weren't able to name them for years, for decades. They were too frightened because so many people had been removed, eliminated, assassinated. Something happened. They lost their jobs. There was so much power amongst this group, who are still in power today with their cronies and but now people say what the whatever. I've got nothing to lose, so they name and shame daily.
Yeah. Did you ever fear for your own safety when you were putting together this documentary?
I never felt fear pulling together the documentary. I have had some concerns since pulling it together because it's not like there's anything that I don't know that's in the film. And I've had quite a few people say, you shouldn't be here when this is released in the country. You should be out of the country. And we're not sure whether it will be approved in Lebanon or whether it will be censored, because it has to go through the censors. I am talking to some distributors in the Middle East and also in Lebanon about it while I'm here. They have asked me questions. Did I get approvals through censorship prior to, for the script? And I said, no, it's a completely independent documentary. But, I don't fear for my life at the moment. I just know that people have said once this goes out globally, it's formally released, because you've only had limited sort of exposure in festival and a few people seeing it, it might anger them really a lot, because I'm putting them on a global platform. I'm exposing them on a global platform, not on a local platform. It's like it's in the family at the moment. It's in the bitching, whatever's going on within a family. But once you take it out and put it on a global platform, I don't know. Anyway, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Yeah, how important is that element to you though, to get that message out and around the world? Like even having the film shown at Cannes, that must have been something that was really, really important for you.
Extremely important. The reality is, you do need to get some sort of credibility and exposure in order to get people's attention and put the spotlight on it. And the way to do that through things like film is to take it to festivals where it gets some independent acknowledgement and critical acclaim. And that's why I took it down the festival circuit immediately, because I wanted that exposure on a global platform, and I wanted, people who are not Lebanese to be shocked and to make comments like you are now, about the story and about the situation, because it is so important that this situation gets out globally, because these people in Lebanon, there's 4.5-5 million Lebanese and another 1.5-2 million Syrian and Palestinian refugees. They can't fight against this criminal ruling class. They just can't. They have tried. I'm working with people on the ground now. There's quite a bit of a resistance and a revolutionary group that's building, that has organised and hoping to get in place a very strong alternative opposition for the elections in May 2022. But they really do need global awareness and focus, and that's from people as well as global leaders and institutions and organisations like the UN and World Bank and IMF, and our Prime Minister Scott Morrison and Joe Biden Boris Johnson and Emmanuel Macron, who say, use their power and leverage on this, ruling elite and say, enough, you're gone, or whatever. They've got them out. They've got to impose sanctions on them. They've got to force them, first of all, to allow elections next year to proceed without, intervention and fraud occurring. Allow international observers to be present so the counting is clean, and everyone to have a vote and not delay it, because they can easily delay elections and continue the crisis. The thing is, it's really hard, because I can understand, like, these guys could give two hoots about anyone, because they're in control and totally have everything sewn up between them, and they might bitch between each other, but they don't give a damn about the people. And I walk around here and I see this sadness and this mood, this depressed mood among the people, and this desperation to get out of this situation. And there's so many people who've lost complete hope, and all they want to do is get the hell out of this country. And they're heartbroken about it, because they love their family, they love their culture, but they want to just live. But they just don't see any way out, and it is tragic to see that. It's tragic. They just want, get me out of here. They're so done. So it's so important for us to use international pressure. And we're launching a petition, which is called #FreeAndFairLebanon, on change.org, to try and get global awareness about this before the elections, and get names and just people to sign and say, yep, it's aimed at the Lebanese to sign, but also world leaders to put pressure on this government and use their power to sanction them, not just to say they're going to sanction them. Yeah.
Definitely. And Daizy, what's the cleanup been like after the explosion, but also with COVID as well? Like, we often hear the saying that evil relishes in tragedy. Has the corruption also come to the forefront during that cleanup and the COVID situation as well?
Look, yeah, absolutely. And I was talking to an activist yesterday who was, and many people in the last week, who are saying, where did all that money come, all that aid, all those donations, all that? It was just gone. Like, some NGOs also are pretty, unethical, but the people, didn't get much of what the aid that came through, and that's because the ruling elite and the government controls the ports and every avenue that aid could come in. But some people obviously did, and there were some organisations that there was, where the governments, like French government, controlled the aid that came in and gave it out. But they did absolutely. The current elite took advantage of the sorrow and the sadness and held events. I just heard yesterday they were holding events like 2 weeks after the explosion, claiming to be raising money for the suffering and rebuilding. But there's hardly any rebuilding going on, except in the areas where their friends and cronies of their buildings and homes were affected. And you can see there's some massive buildings which are being, restored, and the devastation that the impact was far-reaching. I didn't realise how far back and wide it went until I was driving around and walking around the last few days. And the port has been cleaned up. There's a lot of tidy up there, but they're still determining whether the silos are safe. There's a Swiss engineer out at the moment doing this satellite mapping and everything on the silos, and he's to determine whether the silos need to be brought down or not. But there's a lot of work. There's a lot of people. Some places definitely have been restored, and people have worked hard. The people have done it though, and helped each other. And with anything that they could get from their families, or people sent them direct money to Western Union, because their money was withheld in the banks. The banks were as much involved in the entire corruption as the ruling class. So, and as I said in the film, that the banks are 45% owned by the politicians. So, you know, they preserved their money and kept their money. And I just don't understand how unconscionable these people are. It's shocking. It's really shocking.
No, it is. It truly is. And like you said, it is so important for this message to get out there. So I guess my last question is, what is the plans now for the documentary? It's shown at Cannes. Where will people in Australia especially be able to view the documentary?
So we're just finalising our distribution deals. We've got a couple of distributors we're working with in Australia, and the aim is to distribute in November after we finish our festival circuit, because we've been invited to a few other festivals around the world, and a lot of issue-related festivals that are very socially, social justice, human rights, those sort of festivals. And but November we should be launching in Australia, and there'll be a whole campaign to make people aware to come into the cinemas. Hopefully we won't be in lockdown. Otherwise it'll have to be a streaming, on-demand sort of service, because it just needs to start getting out there, because we've got a very short window to get this out, and then it'll go global around the world. It'll be released around the world theatrically in different countries, and its last release will be in Lebanon in the lead up to the election, so as to have the greatest impact and help, inspire another wave of confidence or hope among the people to go and vote, because we need them to go and vote. They have to go and vote, and they have to go and vote against the current establishment.
Definitely. Well, Daizy, I want to again congratulate you on what happened in Cannes last week, but also on making this documentary in general, because this is a stunning documentary, and I want to thank you for taking the time to chat to us today about it.
Absolutely my pleasure, and I'm very grateful again for you taking the time and the interest to, give this a platform to reach the wider audience in Australia. We need everyone's help.